there, welcome to Everyday Moodlings. I'm your host, Jury Parks. It's been a while since I've done a video, I have to say. We took a little break just to kind of catch up on some other things, and I had a bit of a family emergency over the summer, so we're back now. It's September. Our theme for our challenges this month is things that you are obsessed with, or what's your favorite thing. So this week we're looking at favorite coloring mediums, and one of my all-time favorites is the Prima water-soluble oil pastels. Now I have a number of these, whether it's gelatos, I have distress, but these are my favorite. They just are so beautiful and they blend so nicely, so I want to work with these today. And we're also going to work in the big book of backgrounds. So if you've been following the blog for a while, then you've heard me talk about it. If you haven't, I'll put links in so you can see what I'm talking about. But basically I just keep a book. This is a Delusions art journal that I keep just for backgrounds that I then cut up for other things. You can see I cut something out of that one, I've cut out of this one, lots of different pages that I've cut out of to use for various projects, and I just keep them in the book. Well, today we're going to make a big book of backgrounds background, but I'm not using that book. I'm actually using a Strathmore visual journal. This is the vellum finish. The pages aren't particularly thick. In fact, I'd almost like them to be a little thicker. So when I cut these out, I probably will adhere it to another piece of cardstock just to give it some weight. But we're going to make a layered background using our Prima and a bunch of paper. We're going to make kind of a collage layered color background. So what have I got here? Most of these pieces of pattern paper are from one of my favorite little paper stacks. This is from Prima as well, and it is called the Printery Collection. I love this little pack of paper. Very cute. Not cute, but very cool. We'll say it that way. I don't think it's very cute. And I'm going to be layering these on the page. Now, I already put some color down, and this was just one of the yellow crayons. And then I added a little aging ink to it just because it was a little bright. Now you're not going to see much of this because I'm going to be covering it up with my papers. Some of the papers are actual white pieces that have been cut out into shapes on actually using the Cricut. So I cut out bulk shapes, like particularly arrows and hearts, and then just keep them on hand. That way I don't have to recut them over and over again. I'm also going to be using, I think this one, these ledger stamps from Tim Holtz. And then we're also going to use a stencil, a script text stencil. And along with that, I'm going to use some modeling paste and some clear gesso so I don't cover up my background too much. So yeah, we're just going to use a hodgepodge of stuff on here. But the first thing I need to do is to go ahead and get all my parts down here. And I'm just going to be using a glue stick to do that because we're going to put a layer of gesso, white gesso, over the top of it to kind of protect everything. So at this point, I can just use a glue stick to kind of adhere everything down. And just to kind of protect my work surface a little bit, I'm going to use just a piece of scratch paper over here to adhere to, so that when I put the glue on, it doesn't get all over my work surface. So let's go ahead and put all these parts down. we got all our pieces down. Now I really need to seal this up with some gesso so that I can put the next layer of color on it. And I am using clear. That is my preference when it comes to gesso, because I often want to see what's underneath. I don't necessarily want this to be all white. So we're just going to pour this on and use a foam brush to go ahead and seal this all up. And you may need a couple of coats. Going to get everything exactly the way you want it. You may also have a little color transference from the Prima. This is doing pretty good so far. But don't worry about that. We're going to be adding lots more color. And yellow is a great kind of base color because it's pretty light. And so it's not going to interfere with anything else I put on top of it. I'm going back with this old, it's just actually a gift card. I'm just kind of, not really smoothing it out, just kind of giving it some interesting lines, some additional texture. There, now we're all done with this step. And of course, now comes the dreaded drying time. So I'm gonna have to let that sit and dry completely before I put my next step on, which will be with the stencil. We're going to use some modeling paste with the stencil. Okay, so our gesso has dried, and you can see now it's clear, obviously. There are the lines that I created in it, but we won't see those until I add on some additional color. Now at this point, it probably looks a little incohesive. The colors don't really come together. So that will be solved once we put our final layer of color on it using the Prima. But we can't do that yet. I'm going to add in another layer of texture, and we're going to do that with a stencil. And in this case, because my paper has curled just a little bit, I'm actually going to clip it on in place. That way I don't have to worry about it moving. I don't have to worry so much about the paper itself curling, which by and large is not a big deal for me, simply because I cut all these up anyway. But also, by and large, if you're working with a true paper product, it's gonna curl and buckle a little bit, particularly one that's not quite as thick. Now the Strathmore journals that are watercolor paper are 140 pound, and so those aren't going to really buckle on you as much, but I wanted to use this more vellum finish. So I'm just using Liquitex light modeling paste. The difference between light and heavy is what you think it would be. This one weighs less, so just easier, I think, to use on the type of surface that I'm using. If I was using canvas or something like that, I would be more inclined to use the heavy. And we're just taking a palette knife and smushing it through. I rarely do the whole stencil, I usually just do bits and pieces of it. Okay, so we got that done. I'll just take it off. Now, modeling paste is opaque. It will dry white for me, which is the look I was going for. Nice thing about modeling paste is it's more of a semi-porous surface, so it will capture the color that we're going to lay down. And that'll make a really unique, interesting look. One public service announcement: when you use any acrylic mediums with your stencil, you want to make sure to clean them right away. You don't want that to dry on there. Now, again, I have to go back and kind of let this dry a bit, and a lot, obviously. You can't really use a heat gun with acrylic mediums. You can, but what is going to happen is you're going to blister the acrylic medium, which is kind of a cool look, but not the look I'm going for here. So I have to let it dry completely on its own, and then we'll come back and we'll start to layer on our final layers of color. Okay, so my background, my collage background has now dried, and I did put extra gesso on here. So, and now we're gonna go ahead and add in some additional Prima colors. And I just picked out some that I thought would go well with my background. And you're also gonna need a little bit of water to help to activate it. I'm gonna stick primarily with this vermilion color, which is kind of an orangey red, and then this light blue color, and just sprinkle in a little bit of the magenta. Okay, so we got our color added, and now I'm just laying down a little water on I have a craft mat off to the side here, and I'm actually just kind of using my finger. You can also use a baby wipe to come back here and activate the color. Either one will work. You could use a paintbrush too. I just like the control of using my finger, and you'll notice the modeling paste that we put down is going to hold on to that color more than everything else. It's going to really hold on to it nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and finish activating all of my color. I should mention the only problem you might have using a diaper wipe is that the gesso is a little rough, so it might rip it. But you can go ahead and do what I did, which is just to spray the water right on there to kind of get things moving around. Now if I tip this up, it would all kind of start to blend together. It would look really pretty. But I kind of want to keep my colors separated. And actually I have a lot of different colors on here, so it would be easy to make mud. So make sure you kind of clean off your fingers as you're working from color to color so that you don't create mud. Like the pink and the blue go well together, you get a nice purple there, but if I try to take the blue and the orange together, that's just gonna create mud. So just gotta be a little careful, wipe off your finger. Okay, so I'm done with this step, and you can see I blotted up some of the color where I felt like it was too thick, added in a little more, but you can also see how it really highlights all of that text on there from the modeling paste. Gives it a really nice sense of dimension. Now at this point I need to dry it a little bit, and I can go ahead and do that with a heat gun, and then we're going to do just a little stamping on top. I want to bring out, or the black here, the contrast is quite a lot. So what I want to do is add in a little extra black on top so that it'll kind of it'll pull those together. They'll feel a bit more cohesive that way. Okay, so for our final step, I'm going to go ahead and use this ledger stamp, and I'm going to use black. I'm not going to mount it because I kind of want it to fade in and fade out. And my piece is probably not perfectly dry, but we'll call it good enough. Okay, so I've done my stamping and I started to play a little bit more. I decided I wanted some circles on here. Now you can use a Sharpie for this. I kind of wanted them a little bit more blended than that. So I went back to the Prima. Now my finger there is a little bit too much. So I'm going to instead work with a blending pen, or you can use a water pen like this. It's got a really small tip on it. Or you use something like a Tombow or Dove water blending pen. That'll work as well, and then it won't be quite as you'll be able to maintain the shape of the circle a lot better, but still be able to blend it. So that's the blender pen there, but if I want a little bit more blending, it might be better to go back with actual water, or you can just use a water a paintbrush with water too if you want. And if the color feels too intense, just blot some up off of there. Not a big deal. So I'm going to add in a few more circles, and then I have a feeling I'm going to call this one done. Okay, so we're all done. I'm not going to do anything more to it. I just needed some additional black on there to kind of balance out the black in the background. So it's done, and I know it probably looks really crazy busy right now. That's because it's just a background. I haven't put anything in the foreground to give it a focal point. So if you want to see what I did with this background, be sure to visit the blog. If you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be a link. Otherwise, if you're already on the blog, then obviously you're reading this blog post and you'll see my finished project. If you have any questions about anything I did here, please be sure to let me know. Remember, our challenge this week is to work with your favorite color medium, whatever that might be. So I chose to use oil pastels, which I'm a little obsessed about right now. And I would love to know what your favorite color medium is. So post it in the comments. I'd love to know. Until next week, I'm Drury Parks with Everyday Moodlings.